What is up, guys, and welcome back to the channel. It is officially Wedding Wednesday, where we discuss some of your toughest questions and most difficult dilemmas in the business of wedding photography. We've got 3 situations to discuss today, so let's get started. But before we get going, real quick, hit the subscribe button. I've got a ton of content coming up to help grow your photography business, and I don't want you to miss anything. Okay, our first question today is, hi guys, I have not added video services to the list of what I can offer to wedding clients. I do have some very good videographers as close friends and would easily be able to upsell this. Of course, they all ask for different prices. Some are more than my wedding photography pricing. Okay, so this is a wedding photographer who's thinking about adding video services into his packages. I'm just wondering how the pricing structure goes with freelance videographers. Do I put my own price cap on top of that service? Is it correct to think that I should make a certain fee on top of the videographer's price? The clients that I have, I've spent my time, money, and expertise in booking them. On the other hand, I'm not trying to squeeze every inch of money out of it. I need some middle ground info. Thank you so much. So this is a very, very common situation, I think, that's coming up more and more lately with wedding photographers. If you're a wedding photographer, should you somehow add videography into your packages? Whether that means you're doing it in-house or you're contracting out. I think this is a great question, and I think he's doing the right thing by asking some advice before he jumps into it. Because I think if done right, this can work out really well. But unfortunately, I think that many times this turns into a total disaster, and here's why. When you contract out to another business, you really are at their mercy for how the final product comes out and ultimately what the couple thinks about the service that you provided. And remember, because the couple booked through you, whatever this other vendor does is going to get reflected back onto you and your brand. And so that's something you have to be very aware of. For this reason, I think it's really important to only work with vendors that you have a relationship with, that you've worked with before, and that you've known for at least some time. This photographer is asking, should they increase the package price a little bit from the videographer so that the photographer can make a little money in addition to the videographer they're contracting? And I think you could go one of 2 ways here. If you really want to incorporate videography into your photography business and really make some money from it, I think it's totally possible, but you have to be very, very particular with the way things are set up. You have to use people that you trust, you have to use the same people on a regular basis, and you have to be able to produce a consistent product, because that is not something that this person mentioned. They're talking about, should I hire this videographer or that videographer? I'm assuming that depending on who you hire, the videos are going to end up looking completely different, or at least somewhat different, at least different enough that the couple is going to notice. And if there's one thing I've learned in the past several years, it's what couples see on your website is what they expect from you. So I think it's very important to put forth a consistent product. And I think in this situation, the best way to do that would be to approach 1 or 2 videographers maximum. Come to some understanding on what you want to offer your photography clients and see if you can come up with a consistent product offering that you can offer over and over again. But outside of that, I would not be going out there booking videographers at will to fill video jobs for your clients that want video services. I think it's just a recipe for disaster, and it's going to end up hurting you and your business. Another option that you could look at is just simply referring your clients out to a short list of videographers. So this is what we've done during times when we weren't offering videography. We would just have a short list of 3 videographers, and if a client came to us and said, hey, we want to add video to our wedding day, do you know anybody? We would say, sure, here are 3 great options, and by the way, they're at 3 slightly different price points, so the client has some options. And we'd send that email over, and then the client could talk to each person separately and kind of figure out what's best for them. And then if the videographer appreciates that gesture, which I hope they do, maybe they can send you a little bit of a kickback, whether it's $100 or a small percentage of the package price that the couple booked. And then that way you both win, and you both can control the client experience separately. You can handle the photography side of things, and the other vendor can control the videography side of things, and things are separate. And God forbid something happens where the client isn't happy with the videography. I mean, you did refer to them, so I think it is going to come back on you a little bit, but it's definitely not the same thing as your business offering the product and fulfilling that service, and then it kind of going south, and then now the couple is blaming you and your brand. So it's definitely the safer way to go. It's definitely the easier way to go. Unless you're really trying to make a lot of money from videography, I think that this is a better way to do it. But if you really want to incorporate videography and add to the services that you can offer, I think you can do it, but you need to work with an in-house videographer or someone that you work with on a regular basis that can give you consistent work and that you have a long-term relationship with. This way, you and the videographer can be held accountable to each other, and also you can more easily offer a consistent product to the couples. And if you do it that way, I think it's a lot more feasible to bring everything under your brand. Then you can come up with whatever package price you want for the videography, and then separately you can work out a deal with the videographer. Another benefit of this is that you can choose who you want to edit the wedding. You can edit the wedding yourself, or you can hire another editor that's not the person that actually shot the wedding. I think if you take the time to set this up properly, you develop the right relationships, you set up all the infrastructure, it definitely can be worth it to bring it under your brand. It can definitely add a lot of revenue for your business, but I think the pitfalls are in the very beginning. Unfortunately, most people, I think, are just looking for some easy extra money and not willing to put in the work to set things up properly, and unfortunately things end up backfiring on them and the whole house of cards falls down. So if you want to incorporate videography into your photography business, it's possible, but maybe starting out, you should just do it the easy way by referring out to other vendors and just asking for a small percentage of what the client ends up booking. Hi everyone, I just wanted to share my experience. Maybe it would help someone. I just had a small court trial today and I lost the case. I need to return part of my retainer, 55%, to the couple because they canceled the wedding because of COVID restrictions. I usually work on big weddings, and this wedding would have been about 100 people. The judge said that sometimes contracts don't work and it doesn't matter what was written there. He said that the retainer was paid for the more significant wedding and it didn't matter that I could work and that the wedding could technically happen. Also, he said that a 35% retainer is too much and prices should be based on the number of people I take pictures of at the wedding. Also, the photographer doesn't have any losses if the couple cancels about 5 months before the wedding. So if you work on large events, don't forget to put in a COVID clause. Okay, so this is a super interesting situation that hits on a few points that I'm extremely passionate about when it comes to weddings. First point I want to make here is that contracts are not this magical document that enforce everything all the time 100%. Contracts are simply the last tool to help enforce the terms of your agreement. So at the end of the day, it does not matter what is on a piece of paper. It matters what a judge thinks about it if you go to court. And this is exactly why I am not a big fan of taking a big retainer or a big deposit if a couple books with us. Although I don't think a 1/3 retainer or 35% is extremely high, if it's a big wedding package like she implied, in dollars, that's probably a lot of money. And what's gonna happen is a judge is gonna look at that and say, why should you keep thousands of dollars for doing essentially no work? Now, you and I know there is work done in advance of the wedding day. That's why, in my opinion, it's much better to have a smaller retainer like 20% or 25%. It's a lot easier to justify why you require that money in advance of the wedding day for the work you did planning, consulting with the couple, etc. And it'll be a lot easier to keep it. And then the other reason, which is really the biggest reason of them all, is if you have a smaller retainer, the couple is just going to be that much less likely to go after you to actually get the money back. Because if your retainer is, let's say, 20% instead of the 35% here, the couple may just determine, hey, it's not worth the struggle to get this back, let's just let it go. Now, I know some of you are going to say, oh, their wedding got canceled because of COVID or whatever, like you should have a heart and, return the money, and that's totally fine. If you want to do that, that is totally fine. I'm just approaching it from what I think is a more business-oriented view. If you want to take the human approach and say, hey, here's all your money back, no problem, and just walk away from it, that's totally up to you. But in terms of my experience dealing with contracts and how to enforce contracts, I think you are a lot safer, and in the long term, you'll make out better if your retainer is slightly on the smaller side rather than the bigger side. And by the way, guys, I want to let you know that none of this is legal advice. This is just my personal opinion from my previous experience being in the wedding business for 7 or 8 years now. I can't even remember how long it's been, and shooting literally hundreds of weddings. So take it for what you will. It's not legal advice. It's for entertainment purposes only. So enjoy. Okay, and our last question for today is, I have a fellow photographer inquiring about shooting her wedding beginning of next year, and is asking about getting the RAWs so she can edit it in her own style. I've never done that, and frankly, I don't know if I should even consider. I don't know how to go about it. Any advice? And she also added, if I were to let her have the RAWs, do I charge her more? So I see this question from time to time pop up in terms of couples asking for the raw photos. And my own personal policy on giving couples raw photos is pretty much no. And the reason isn't because I don't want them to have the raw photos. It's mostly because couples don't understand what a raw photo is, why you would want it, and what it actually looks like. And for example, a lot of the photos that I personally shoot, they're all underexposed on purpose to preserve highlights. And there's other things that I do, like I shoot wider than I know the actual photo will end up being so that I can crop in a little. There's just techniques that I incorporate that a non-photographer wouldn't understand. And then the average person would look at it and say, this is an awful photo, why did I hire you? So from that point of view, it can be very risky sending raw photos to a couple. But in this case, the bride is actually a photographer, and so she's requesting from this girl she's asking to shoot her wedding, hey, would you mind sending me the raw photos so I can edit the photos in the style that I like? And actually, I've got to give credit to this bride because she's politely asking before, she's not asking after the fact, and I think she's being very honest and upfront about it. And for the photographer asking the question, no offense to her, I think that these weird situations come up sometimes and you just don't know what the right thing to do is. I would have no problem shooting for another photographer and sending them to the RAWs because they should know what to expect when getting raw photos. I don't feel like I'm giving away my art or my creativity or anything. At the end of the day, I'm being hired for a job. I'm honored to be considered by a fellow photographer to shoot their wedding, and I would be happy to do the best I can on the day of and then hand over the raw files. Obviously, whatever happens after the files leave your camera is not on you. If the editing turns out to be awful, then it doesn't reflect on you, and maybe the only thing you would want to ask the other person is like, hey, I don't mind sending you the raw files, but just please you don't have to worry about crediting me. You can just have the raw files and do what you will with them. I know that's going to make a lot of wedding photographers cringe inside, but I think a lot of times we get caught up that we're such like artists and we get so dramatic about it, and we really just need to remember that we're being hired to do a job, and we should try to provide the best service possible. And as long as the other person understands what they're getting, everything should be good to go. And no, I wouldn't charge them more either. So that is it for today's questions. Let me know, do you agree? Do you disagree? Write down in the comments below your thoughts. And if you want to see more videos about the wedding photography business, hit the subscribe button, and I will see you in the next video.